Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babel on Talmud. Ooh, 1 second. Right, so as I was saying, welcome back to Babel on Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Mem Beis, Daf 42 of Masech the Sukkah. We move on to the next part of the Mishnah that we learned yesterday. We discussed Rabbi Yossi's opinion, which is Ta'bid Var Mitzvah is potter. That if you did an Isser Kares in the context of doing a different mitzvah, you're right, so you're going to be potter from bringing a korban if you did it by accident. Then we get to a new Mishnah. We discuss Ketanim, shaking the lulav, which is interesting. And then we complete the third parak. We move on to the fourth parak, the parak of Lulav Arava, which is very interesting. So, let's jump in over here on Daf Mem Aleph Mud Beis, all the way at the bottom. Rabbi Yossi Omer Yom Tiv. So, what did Rabbi Yossi say in the Mishnah? Who could remind everybody? Rabbi Yossi Omer Yom Tiv Arishin Shchalios B'Shabbos. Right? It says Rabbi Yossi at the end of yesterday, the Mishnah that we learned on Mem Aleph Mud Beis. He says that when the first day of Sukkot falls out on Shabbos, V'shochach v'otzis alulav l'shusarab potem p'nishutzio pirishus. You hear that, friends? That when it's when the first day of Sukkot is Shabbos, in which case, Sukkah on the first lulav on the first day of Sukkot is Mida Oraisa, even outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Right, lulav on the first day of Sukkot is Mida Oraisa outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So in the Beis Hamikdash it's Mida Oraisa all 7 days. Fine. So we're talking about the first day of Sukkot. A fellow makes a mistake and he brings his lulav from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. So we say that he's going to be potter, even though it's Hotzah, Rishus L'Rishus, which we know all about. Says Rabbi Yossi, he's going to be potter because he took it out with permission. Because it's the concept of Torah B'dvar Mitzvah. Rabbi Yossi's opinion is, right, what does Rashi say? Because Rashi in the Mishnah says, because Rabbi Yossi Torah B'dvar Mitzvah v'shagag b'dvar kores, potter mi korban. That if a fellow makes a mistake in the context of doing a mitzvah, such as over here, in the context of doing the mitzvah of lulav, of taking the dal minim, he accidentally went from Rishus L'Rishus, he took from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. Nevertheless, it's the same thing, he is going to be potter, because he made a mistake, even though Hotzah is something that has a Isser Chiyuv Karis with it. Nonetheless, since it was in the context of the mitzvah of lulav, he's potter from bringing a korban, even though generally, if you would be machal Shabbos by accident, you would bring a korban chatas, as we all know. Omer Abaye, says Abaye, lo shanu el shlo yotzabo. Says Abaye, now this is only pre-being yotzei the mitzvah of dalad minim. Right? Meaning, if you hadn't yet taken your dalad minim on that day of the first day of Sukkot, so you're all busy with the fact that you have to do lulav, I could relate, not because that's whatever. I can understand. I know people who get worked up about things, and so right, I understand how a person, the concept of a person getting all worked up about a mitzvah, and then they might end up doing Hotzah Mirishus L'Rishus. Fine. Aval Yotze Bo Chayev. But if he already did the mitzvah, he's already Yotze. So what's there to be worked up about? He's already Yotze the mitzvah. So in that case, when he's at that point, what's he worked up about? And there's no excuse, and then he's going to be Chayev, a korban chatas, if he accidentally takes out his dalad minim and he was already Yotze. Homidag boy nofik bey, frek the Gemara. But 1 second. The second that he picks up the lulav, what's the inyan? What's the bracha that you make on the tilas lulav, taking the lulav? Once you pick up the lulav, you're already technically speaking yotze. You already picked up the lulav. You already took the lulav. So then, won't you already be yotze the mitzvah by the time you take it outside? From the time you picked it up already, you're technically speaking, you're yotze the mitzvah. So then, by the time you take it outside, from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, Memela, you already yotze the mitzvah, so how could it be that you can be potter from the korban if Abai is correct that once already you're yotze, then you're going to be chayev a korban, even according to Rabbi Yossi. Amar Abaye, so Abaye answers, Kishe Hofko, that when he flipped it over, that in order to be yotzi the mitzvah, you have to hold up the lulav and the dalaminim in the right direction, from the bottom up, right? The top of the lulav and the dasim and the aravis have to be pointing upwards towards the sky, and the bottom towards the ground. If you flip it over, and you have like the holding gadget on the top now, and the lulav and the dasim and the aravis are facing the ground, well then you're not, so if you picked it up in that way, you're not going to be yotze. And then, so you haven't yet been yotze the mitzvah, and then you go outside, so you're going to be potter, since it was in the context of you haven't yet done the mitzvah. Rava Omer says, Rava afilu te'emah shelo hafko. Rava says, I can explain to you how you cannot be yotze even in a situation where you did not flip it over, and that is that he took it out in some kind of a vessel. He took a piece of, plate or something, and he put the lulav on it, and then he took that outside. So in that case, it's not, that's not what, the taking of the lulav that we're talking about when we say that you take the lulav and you yotze. So therefore, you're not going to be yotze the mitzvah, right? You're not going to have considered to have already done the mitzvah. And when you take it outside, you'll be potter from being a korban chatas, since you hadn't yet fulfilled the mitzvah. But 1 second, didn't we learn just the other day? Was it even yesterday? No, not yesterday. But he said, where did we say this? Lamed Zayin, 5 days ago. That if you chop, right? What do we say? Chopping by way of something else is considered chopping. That if you take the lulav and you're like, you wrapped your hand in a scarf and then you pick up the lulav. So says Rava that that picking up the lulav, even if it's by means of another thing in between, is still considered picking up the lulav. So here also, Frekta Gemara, according to Rava, if he picks up the lulav and takes it out, but it's like on a plate or something, who cares? Wouldn't Rava still say that that's considered picking it up and taking it? So the Gemara answers, when Rava says that likicha de davar acher is considered likicha, that's in an honorable way. For example, if you take a scarf and you use that to pick up your lulav, so that would be still considered taking the lulav. Aval derech bizayon lo. But if it's in a bizayon dik way, if it's in like a not such a nice way, such as like putting your lulav on a plate or something and taking that out, well then that's not considered likicha, and therefore you won't be yotze the mitzvah. You won't be fulfilling the mitzvah, and when you take it out to Rosh Hashanah Rabbim, you will be potter from a korban chatas. Omer Rav Huna says, Omer Hoyer Rabbi Yossi, that Rabbi Yossi would say the following: Ola sa'of shenimtzeis ben agapayim. So if you have a korban ola of a bird, now, of course, a korban ola is not eaten by anybody; it's entirely burnt on the mizbeach. So nobody's supposed to eat it. Shenimtzeis ben agapayim, that it got mixed up together with all the other birds that over there. Uchsaver chatasov he, and a kohen now thinks that it's a chatasov. Now korban chatas is eaten by the kohanim. So you have this kohen who thought that he's eating a korban chatasov, a sin offering of a bird, which he would be, he's supposed to eat. But in reality, what he was eating was an ola sa'of, a ola, korban ola of a bird, which you don't eat. It just gets entirely burnt. Ve'achla potter. And so if he eats it, so says Rabbi Yossi that he's potter. My kamash malon. So the Gemara wants to know, okay, I mean, givaldik, but like, what's the chiddush? The Talmud var mitzvah potter? That Rabbi Yossi holds that if a person makes a mistake in the context of a mitzvah, he's potter from having to bring a korban, right, that he's potter. Or maybe is it about a korban or potter? I don't know, what would he be potter from? Maybe from having to bring his own korban chatas for having done that. I guess if you ate kachim that you weren't supposed to eat, I guess. I'm not exactly sure what the punishment is. But either way, so Rabbi Yossi is saying that in this context, where he thought that he was eating a korban chatas sa'of, which is a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to eat, for a kohen to eat the korban chatas sa'of. But he made a mistake, and he ate a korban ola sa'of, which he's not supposed to eat. So he made a mistake in the context of a mitzvah, eating, a kohen eating kachim. and he made a mistake and he ate olas off, which he wasn't supposed to eat. And Rabbi Yossi is saying he's potter. So what's the chiddush? That if a fellow makes a mistake in the context of a mitzvah that he's potter, hainu hach. We already know that from our Mishnah, where he says that if a fellow takes his lulav out from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos, he's potter because it was in the context of a mitzvah. So I already know that. Tar b'dvar mitzvah, potter. So now the tema, I may have thought that hasmu the tar b'dvar mitzvah potter, hanu the avad mitzvah. So the Gemara says, well, I do actually need both cases, because I may have thought to say that in the former case, that in our case of lulav, ultimately he did a mitzvah, right? Meaning it was in the context of a mitzvah. He hadn't yet, as we said at the top of the page, he hadn't yet done the mitzvah. And he was, in the context of doing the mitzvah, he took it out from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, and he ultimately ended up doing a mitzvah. So he's potter. It was in the context of a mitzvah. He made a mistake, so he's potter. But over here, when a Kohen eats an ola sa'of, he didn't do any mitzvah at all. You're not supposed to eat that bird. You made a mistake and you ate a bird you weren't supposed to eat. There was no mitzvah that was done. So I may have thought that in this case, we don't apply the concept of tar b'dvar mitzvah potter, that if a fellow makes a mistake in the context of a mitzvah, he's potter. Because here, by the ola sa'of, he didn't do any mitzvah b'chlal. Kamash malon. That is what Rav Huna is teaching us, that according to Rabbi Yossi, even there, he's still going to be potter, since it was in the context of a mitzvah, in the context of eating chata sa'of, he accidentally ate ola sa'of, he's still going to be potter, even though he didn't end up doing a mitzvah. Okay? Fine. Meisvei, we have a kasha. Rabbi Yossi, says Rabbi Yossi, Ashoichet es atomid she'enu mevoker ki elchaso, b'shabos. Chayiv chatas. Let's read that again. Meisvei, we have a kasha. Rabbi Yossi, says Rabbi Yossi, Ashoichet es atomid she'enu mevoker ki elchaso b'shabos. If a fellow, a Kohen, does it have to be a Kohen? Maybe not. But if a fellow slaughters the korban tamid on Shabbos, but it wasn't properly checked, does that mean that it lemaised at a mum, or just that it wasn't properly checked? Let's see. I'm not actually sure. There's an implication that it had a mum. But either way, he ended up slaughtering this animal on Shabbos that he wasn't supposed to be slaughtering. Chayav chatas. V'tzarch tamid acher. Rabbi Yossi says he's chayav a korban chatas and he has to bring a different korban tamid. So 1 second. I thought Rabbi Yossi is the one who says that if you make a mistake in the context of a mitzvah, you're going to be potter. Why over here is Rabbi Yossi saying that if you made a mistake and you slaughtered the wrong animal on Shabbos for the korban tamid, all of a sudden you're chayav. Korban tamid is a mitzvah. You made a mistake in the context of a mitzvah. You should be potter, no? So Omer lei. So we said, Bar Mina, don't bring me a proof from there. Da'ahi, Da'itmar la Amr of Shmuel bar Chatoy, Amr of Amnuna Sava, Amr of Yitzchak bar Ashian, Amr Rav, Huna Amr Rav, Kigon She'eviu Milishka She'enin Mevukard. That the reason why Rabbi Yossi says in that case, when a fellow slaughters this korban on Shabbos for the korban tamid that wasn't properly checked for mums, so Rabbi Yossi says that he's going to be chayav korban chatas, even though it was the context of a mitzvah of the korban tamid, is because in this case he brought the animal from a place where the sheep weren't checked, right? Meaning we learned, I think in Masechet Pesachim, we learned that there was a lishka, an office in the Beis Hamikdash, that they would always have at least 6 sheep over there that were being checked, that were checked and usable for the korban tamid. And if this fellow brought the animal from an office where the sheep were not checked and ready to be used, well then he had no business bringing it in the first place, and we don't even consider it to be tar b'dvar mitzvah, right? He's completely, this wasn't even, it was a complete mess up, a complete dropping of the ball, right? He didn't even bring an animal that was like possible to be usable, because he brought it from a place where the animals aren't checked yet. So because he was so far off the mark, he's going to be chayav a korban chatas, even though yes, it was technically in the context of a korban tamid, but this animal that he brought was completely irrelevant for korban tamid. He had no business going to that room to chop an animal from a place where the animals aren't checked yet. So that's why he's going to be chayiv. But in general, Rabbi Yossi would hold that if a fellow makes a mistake in the context of a mitzvah, he would be potter from bringing a korban chatas. Says the Mishnah, Mikabeles isha miad bno miad baila. A woman can take a lulav from her husband or from her son, umachziraso lamoyim b'Shabbos, and return it to the water on Shabbos, right? So if it's Shabbos and you're keeping your daled minim in water to keep them fresh, and in the morning you take them out of the water in order to take them to the synagogue and use them. Well, if it's Shabbos, mistama, you're not taking it out to the synagogue, but maybe in your house or whatever, you're going to shake them. So we're saying that a woman is permitted to take the dalaminim from her husband or from her son and then return it to the water on Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda b'Shabbos machzirin. On Shabbos you're allowed to return the dalaminim to the water. B'Yom Tif mosifin. On Yom Tif you're even allowed to add water. Uv'moed machlifin. And during Chol Hamoed you could swap out the water for new water. I think it's even encouraged. A youngin who knows, a child who knows how to shake lulav, so he is obligated, I believe we learned at least midar abonon, in order to, is obligated to shake the lulav. Pshita, so the Gemara asks, obviously a woman can take the lulav from her husband or from her son and put it into the water. Like, what's the problem? Well, since technically speaking, a woman doesn't have a chiyuv to take the lulav. Did we say it was because of mitzvah sasesha as man grama? Was that what? Did we maybe ask two kashas? Did we maybe give two reasons? I can't remember now. But, so since a woman, technically speaking, is potter from taking lulav, so therefore, I may have thought that maybe it's muksa. So kamash milanda, no, it's not considered, the lulav is not considered muksa. Fine. A child who knows how to shake the lulav, a child who knows how to shake the lulav, so he has an obligation, at least midar abonon, to shake the lulav. Tanur abonon, the rabbis taught, a child who knows how to shake the lulav, so he has an obligation to shake the lulav. If he knows how to put on tzitzis, so he's got an obligation to put on tzitzis. Lishma tefillin, aviv lokeach lo tefillin, a young child knows already how to take care of the tefillin. So then his father buys from tefillin. Yodea l'daber aviv lomdo Torah. A child knows how to speak. His father should teach him Torah. V'kriyashma. And how do we kriyashma? Torah mai. What does it mean that his father teaches him Torah? Amar Rav Hamnuna, says Rav Hamnuna, Torah tzivalanu Moshe merasha kilas Yankiv. That Moshe commanded us the Torah. It is an inheritance for the congregation of Yaakov. Which is interesting that it's Rav Hamnuna, because if I'm not mistaken, on daf was like Yud Aleph or something of Masechta Brachos, where they talk about the Birkos HaTorah, maybe Yud Beis, I can't remember, but they talk about Birkos HaTorah, right? Is it the higher of Hashem Elokeinu? There were like two brachos, right? The Shebachabanim Kolam Nasanas Torah. So that and Ashek T'Shem Mitzvot V'Son Lasu B'Divei Torah. I think those two, and I think Rav Hamnuna says that maybe we say both of them or something, or maybe Rav Hamnuna, I can't remember. Rav Hamnuna was involved there, Lamaise, I think. Let's go weiter. But interesting that he's the one who says this, because he also, I think, was involved in that discussion about the Birkas HaTorah. Kriya Shema Mai, what does it mean that his father teaches him? Kriya Shema Pasuk Rishon, the first Pasuk of Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hayideh Lishma Gufo, once a child knows how to guard his body, to make sure that his body won't become tameh, so then ochlan al gufo tyrus. So then if tyrus, like truma or something, touches his body, so then you could still eat it, because you can assume that he is tahor. He knows how to guard himself from becoming tameh. Lishma is yodov. If he knows how to guard his hands, now, as we learned in Masechta Brachos, that's stam yodayin shniosem. Right, that the rabbis made a decree that your hands, because they move around a lot and they touch all sorts of things, so they are considered by default a sheni l'tuma. So if a child already knows how to guard his hands, ochlan al yod of tyrus. Well, then if he knows to guard his hands, and that if he touches something tameh, so he has to wash his hands. So then you could, even if he touches truma or something, you could still eat them because you can assume that he knows how to guard his hands, and you don't have to be concerned about the din d'Rabbanan in that context. If once a child can be asked, right? So if you can ask him, hey, is this thing tahor or tameh? And he's able to answer you whether it's tahor or tameh. So once he reaches that age, so then if you ask him in Rosh Hashanah, hey, is this thing tameh? And he says, I don't know. So then it's going to be tameh, because safek tumah b'Rosh Hashanah is tameh. But if it's a Rosh Hashanah, sfeiko tahor. If you ask him Rosh Hashanah, hey, is this thing tahor or tameh? He says, I don't know. So then it's going to be tahor, because safek tumah b'Rosh Hashanah is tahor. Idea lifros. Once a child knows how to do birkas kohanim, lifros kapov, cholkelo truma b'veis hagranis, so then we can give him truma in a granary. We don't have to worry about, people saying, what, you're giving this cotton truma. Once he could duchen, once he could do birkas kohanim, you can give him truma in a granary. Hayodea lishchot ochlim mishchitaso. Once a child knows how to slaughter, you can eat from his slaughter. Alright? And as Rashi points out, even if he doesn't necessarily know the halachas, but he knows how to do it. He knows how to take an animal, slit the neck, and all sorts of other things that I don't know how to do. But this fellow knows how to do it, so you can eat his slaughter. Amar Ravuna, v'ushagadol omer al gabav. Ravuna says, but yeah, there has to be parental supervision. Makes sense. Yachol echol kazayis dogin. Once a child is able to eat a kazayis of grain, marchikin mitzo also, so we stay away from his excrement. Me raglav in his urine. Arba amas, 4 amas. Omer of Chizde, says of Chizde. But he has to be able to eat this grain b'chdei achilas pras, which we've learned about kdei achilas pras a few times. It's basically the way that we judge eating, that it's considered eating if you can eat a kazayas within the amount of time that it takes to eat this, like basically 4 eggs worth of bread. So if you can eat a kazayas of bread or this grain within the amount of time that it takes to eat 4 eggs worth of bread, so then you got to stay away from the excrement and the urine. Omer of Chiyabrei to Rav Yeva v'gadol afapi shenu yachol lechol b'chdei achilas pras. So now says Rav Chiyabrei to Rav Yeva that, but if the fellow is an adult, so then even if he's unable to eat grain within achilas pras, still you got to stay away from his excrement. Tichsiv, as the pasuk says, v'yosef das yosef machov. Fellow who has more knowledge, i.e. is an adult, he has more disgustingness. Basically, stay away from the excrement. The mice. Okay. If once a child knows how to eat a kazayas of roasted meat, shochten olav a pesach, so you can include him in the korban pesach. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, liish lefi ochlo, that if a fellow can eat, so you include him in the korban pesach. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda has yochel levara achila. Rabbi Yehuda says he has to be able to distinguish eating. What does this mean that he has to be able to distinguish eating? So it means, well, if you give him a pebble, he throws it away. You give him a nut, he keeps it. So that's how it means that he can distinguish whether or not to eat. Hajan olach lulav agazel. Come back to you, Perek, stolen lulav. Nucheva, what do you think about Perek lulav agazel? It's a famous Perek. You liked it, right? Right. Alright, and we're moving on to the new Perek. Right, Dafayomi, we don't stop for a second. Finish the 3rd Perek. And just like that, we're on to the 4th parak, the parak of Lulav Arava. Lulav Arava, Shisha V'Shiva. So the Lulav as well as the Arava, in the Beis HaMikdash, they would take the Lulav as well as the Arava. We're going to learn a little bit exactly what that was. But that would be 6 or 7 days. We're going to explain what that means. Hahalav Asimcha, saying Hallel, as well as Simcha, eating shlamim, eating korban shlamim, shmona for 8 days, including Shmini Atzeres. Sukkah, v'nisu chamayim, shiva. So sitting in a sukkah and eating in a sukkah, living in a sukkah, as well as the water libations with the korban tamid shel shachar every day, would be shiva, all 7 days of sukkahs. Hechalul chamisha, v'shisha. So the flute that they would play at the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, which I think we're going to talk about in the next parak, so that was, depending on when the first day of Yom Tov was, it was either 5 days or 6 days. So how could it be 5 days? So basically, playing the flute by the Simchas Beis HaShoeva was not Docha Shabbos or Yom Tov. So if the first day of Sukkot is on Shabbos, so then basically the first day of Sukkot is Yom Tif, and if it's also Shabbos, so then you feed two birds with one seed. Now you have 6 more days that you could play the flute at the Simchas Pesach Shoeva. If the first day of Yom Tif is during the week, I don't know, let's say Tuesday, so then the first day of Sukkot is Yom Tif, and then you're going to have a Shabbos in the middle somewhere, so both those days you're not going to play the flute, but the rest of the 5 days you could play the flute. Lulav, Shiva, Ketzad, how could it be that the Lulav is for 7 days? Yom Tiv Arishon Shechag Shchalios B'Shabbos, that if the first day of Sukkot falls out on Shabbos, so then Lulav Shiva. So then you're gonna take the Lulav for all 7 days of Sukkot. So Shakol Hayomim, Shisha. However, if the first day of Sukkot is a Tuesday, so then so you'll take the Lulav on the first day of Yom Tov, sure, but on Shabbos Chol HaMoed you won't take the Lulav, and the Gemara is going to explain why not. Because after all, this is talking about in the Beis HaMikdash, right? Because it says Lulav Arava Shisha V'Shiva, right? Meaning it's 7. We're talking about the Beis HaMikdash, because in the Beis HaMikdash that's where the mitzvah was all 7 days. Okay, but we're saying that, right? And in the Beis HaMikdash, the Lulav mitzvah of Lulav is Mida Oraisa, all 7 days. So now we're saying that if the first day of Sukkot is on a Shabbos, so then you could take you'll take the Lulav even on Shabbos. And take the Lulav even on Shabbos, and therefore you'll be taking the Lulav for all 7 days. But if the first day of Yom Tif is of Sukkot is not on Shabbos, so then Shabbos Chol HaMoed you will not take the Lulav, and then Lulav will be for 6 days. Arave Shiva Ketzad. How is it that the Arave, that what they do with the Arave, to surround the Mizbeach with the Arave, that's for 7 days? How would it be 7 days? Yom HaShvi Shel Arave Shchalios B'Shabbos Arave Shiva. That if the 7th day, Hoshana Rabbah, if the last day of Sukkot is on Shabbos, so then you will take the Arave every single day of Sukkot. Ushar Kol Hayomim. But if the 7th day, if the last day of Sukkot is not on Shabbos, which means that Memele Shabbos is going to be one of the other days of Sukkot, so then you will not take the Arava on Shabbos, and it will be only 6 days. Shisha, fine. Shakol Yom Shisha. Mitzvah's Lulav Ketzad. So how do you do the mitzvah of Lulav? So Yom Tiv Arishon Shchalios Shachag Shchalios B'Shabbos. If the first day of Sukkot falls out on Shabbos, so the first day of Sukkot is Shabbos, and we said that you'll take the Lulav that day and that Shabbos. Molichen es Lovein Lahar Abayis. So before Shabbos, everybody would bring their Lulav to the Beis HaMikdash. V'achazonim mekablin meyen, and the people who worked there, who were in charge, who were working at the Beis HaMikdash, so they would take your Lulav, right? You would bring your Lulav to the Har HaBayis, and you would give it to the people working there. V'sojin also nagabe itztaba, and they would take everybody's Lulav, and they would put them on top of the itztaba. Basically, there were these benches for people to sit on the Har HaBayis, like the big courtyard area in the Beis HaMikdash. So there were places to sit, and on top of there was there was like a roof on top. So these people working in the Beis HaMikdash, they would take the Lulav and they would organize them. They would put them on this sort of like roof that was over these benches. And the elder people who didn't want to get trampled on when everybody was fighting for the Lulavs, so they would put their Lulav in some special office, and they can just go to that office and take it the next day. And they would tell everybody, look, don't get too attached to your dalaminim, because chances are you're not going to get yours. There's 1 million people over here. Or remember, what did we say in Masechta Psachim? That by the Korban Pesach, what did we say? There were like 12 million people, or there was some like crazy number of people, right? There were a lot of people, Lamaisa. So they said, look, you're probably not going to get your own lulav. So they would tell everybody, look, Kol misha magia lulavi liyado, to say that whoever gets my lulav, arei ulob matane, it's his. Then the next day on Shabbos, the first day of Sukkot, which is Shabbos, they would come to the Beis HaMikdash, and the people who worked there would go on this roof that was on top of these benches, and they would just start chucking lulavs off of the roof. And they would go, it was a big fight. It was like when they throw candy at the bar mitzvah, and all the kids are jumping this way and that way to chap arayin. So that's what was going on with the lulav. And when the Bezdin realized that this was becoming dangerous. So they said, all right, you know what? Maybe instead of everybody bringing their lulav to the Beis Hamikdash in advance and then throwing it in a whole Indian, so they said, you know what? Just leave your lulav at home and just take the lulav in your home. Interesting. Almost reminds me of like the situation with the Kohanim running up the ramp in the Beis Hamikdash. I guess it happens like that with everything in life, right? Everything is fun at the beginning and it's like unorganized, it's grassroots, it's like, let's just like, figure it out as we go. And then somebody gets hurt and then all of a sudden we got to put in rules and stuff like that. I mean, okay, I'm not to say that there's anything wrong with the rules and stuff, but it's interesting how things develop, when things are kind of like, they start off kind of cool and fun and then the rules kind of get implemented. My preference is to like not have these too many rules, because rules kind of stick around for a while and then you just get more and more rules and then chaval, man. So I prefer not to have these rules that are just going to stick around for a long time. That's my preference. So all right, so what do we talk about today? So we started off the first part discussing Rabbi Yossi's opinion, which is that Tabud var mitzvah potter. If a fellow makes a mistake when he's in the context of a mitzvah, so he's potter. So, for example, the first day of Sukkah, where there's a mitzvah everywhere, in the Beis Hamikdash, outside the Beis Hamikdash, everywhere there's a mitzvah to take the lulav on the first day of Sukkah. So, if a fellow made a mistake and he took it out to Rosh Hashanah, so he's going to be potter from a korban. Abaye points out that this is specifically if he was not yet yotzei the mitzvah at the time that he took it out to Rosh Hashanah. Then we said, wait, but from the time he picks it up, Memele is yotzei the mitzvah. How can he not be yotzei the mitzvah? So Abaye says either he picks it up upside down, so he's not yotzei the mitzvah, or Rava says that he kind of holds it in like a kli of sorts, and then he won't be technically yotzei. And if he takes it out to Rosh Hashanah, he's going to be potter. Fine. Givaldig. Now, we got to a new Mishnah which says that you're basically allowed to return the water, the lulav to the water to keep it moist on Yom Tif, and then on Shabbos and Memele Yom Tif. Yom Tif you can even add water. Chol Moed you could swap the water. Seder, at least that was Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Then we talked about all sorts of like things that a child, when he's a certain age, including from the time that he knows how to shake a lulav, so then he's already chayiv in the mitzvah of lulav. We talked about other things as well. From the time he knows how to talk, so you teach him Torah Tzivulon Moshe Moshe Kilas Yaakov, things like that. We finished the third parak of Masechta Sukkah, and without wasting a beat, we moved on to the fourth parak of Masechta Sukkah and parak Lulav Va'arava, and we discussed the lulav, the arava, 6 days, 7 days, the different, right? The Nisuch HaMayim and the Sukkah are also 7 days, are always 7 days. The flute of the Simchas Beis HaShreva is sometimes 5, sometimes 6 days. And we describe at the very end how at the beginning they would bring the lulav to the Beis Hamikdash, and they would like basically chuck them out on Shabbos, and everybody would have to kind of, jump and find it and all that kind of stuff. But then people got hurt, so they stopped doing it. Chaver, that was the Mem Beis of Masechta Sukkah. I hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.